Human beings, Homo sapiens. Nature, the phenomena of the physical world, products of the earth. What is the relationship between these two? Is it positive? Is it negative? Is it complicated? There is no one answer, and really there is no one relationship either. A relationship is the way in which two things are connected. Us and nature are inherently tied because, well, we are a part of it, or at least we are from it. We are that physical phenomena, products of the earth. Our long evolutionary line ties us to the life on the planet. The rhythmic seasons of the Holocene allowed us to invent farming. The gifts of the earth have let us flourish as a species. We have expanded to reach all corners of the globe. We went into space, created cultures, societies, plastic, planes, art, music, fast travel, and global communication. We have grown and grown, conquered, killed, and climbed to the highest peaks on Earth. The Earth, after all these years, so little in its timeline, what has become of our first relationship? What is the relationship between humanity and nature? I set out to answer, or at the very least explore, this question a few months ago. As with any question relating to all of humanity, I had to grapple with the idea of scale. All interaction is important, but was I examining our net relation, how our species as a singular large-scale unit acts in relation to nature? Or was I examining the personal, the private, mine or my friends or my community's relation to nature? After all, burning fossil fuels is one interaction with nature, but so is cutting up a bell pepper or taking your dog on a walk. They are vastly different in scale and outcome, but in terms of my question, I like to think of them as equally important. They are both a part of the relationship. I found the term commodification to be useful in describing a particular and present form of interaction with nature, one where an assigned value is all that matters. In many cases, natural resources have not been treated as important parts of the global ecosystem, rather as avenues for economic growth. Speaking of capitalist societies in particular, inclusion in the market is always good and exclusion is always bad. Thus, nature is treated as an unlimited resource that can be exploited forever. Obviously, this is not the case. The act of commodifying nature has led to many negative outcomes. Viewing nature through the capitalist lens makes the relationship a parasitic one. Large-scale destruction. Characterizing this category is a lot of facts, hard statistics on what we as a species are doing to this planet. What actions are committed on a global industrialized scale every day? An entire project could be devoted to mapping this, but the bottom line is that we are destroying nature.
Right now, we're facing a man-made disaster of global scale. Our greatest threat in thousands of years, climate change. If we don't take action, the collapse of our civilizations and the extinction of much of the natural world is on the horizon.
There is a flip side to humans' destructive practices. I labeled most positive forms of interaction with nature as Reciprocity, exchanging things for mutual benefit. As the earth is always giving to us, anything we give back is inherently reciprocity. On a small scale, this might look like picking up litter, taking only what you need, respecting your surroundings. Although acts like this will not change the fate of nature, it is a step in the right direction and a facet of the relationship. When doing this research, it became clear that we can learn a lot from an indigenous perspective. This is Dr. Robin Kimmerer, a biologist and Potawatomi tribe member.
The earth is made of gifts and gratitude, and perhaps that is what the earth continues to ask of us today. Gratitude for all that we have been given. Now, gratitude may seem like weak tea, given the desperate challenges that lie before us, but it is powerful medicine, more than a simple thank you. Gratitude pulls us into relationship with other entities, reminding us that our very existence relies on the gifts of others. Gratitude calls us to acknowledge the personhood of all beings, from maple trees to snapping turtles. And gratitude is humbling. It's an antidote to the arrogance of our time. It reminds us that we are just one member of the democracy of species. It reminds us that the earth does not belong to us.
When we practice gratitude to the earth, we are on the way to reciprocity and thus on our way to improving our relation to nature. Personal interaction. When thinking of smaller scale human-nature interaction, I looked to my surroundings. Here at Skidmore College, we have the Northwoods, a huge forest for recreation and research. It has its fair share of litter and remnants of human activity, but at least from my observations, we do an okay job at having positive interactions with nature here. I know that many find solace in a lonely walk through the trails, and that a night spent deep in the woods by a fire is always welcome. One could argue the repercussions of our presence in the forest, but it is a positive interaction, at least in some ways. Of course, I can really only tell you the human side of the story. The macro and micro scales I have discussed are all important, but it is equally relevant to mention all of the layers of interaction bubbling underneath. For one, I became interested in this project and learned a lot from media. David Attenborough, who I played a clip of earlier, captured and presented nature for generations of people, myself included. That is a part of the relationship. The way we consume that media is relevant. The positionality of Attenborough as a European is relevant, and thus colonialism is relevant. My own place as an absorber and aggregate of the information is relevant. Perhaps it seems too deep a rabbit hole, interrogating these layers of meaning. I like to think of it as thick description, an anthropological term for describing not just behaviors, but the layers and layers of context surrounding behavior. One of those important pieces of context is language. I speak English, so the experiences I have drawn upon and the sources I have used are all from that perspective. This piece of information feels particularly pertinent in being transparent about my biases and positionality. Overall, consistent thought about scale and layers of interaction were important to me during this process. The relationship between modern man and nature is a complex web of interaction and intentionality. I found myself entangled in and enthralled by the nuance of it all. I felt that I had journeyed far, but was still deep in a dense forest of questions. I had examined and considered our relationship with nature, and found it to be so vast in its forms that I had no choice but to categorize ways of interaction as best I could. I like to think that these categories, explanations, facts, and maps tell the story of our relationship to nature, but I will let you be the judge of that. Perhaps it is impossible to fully grasp the relationship between modern man and nature. Or perhaps my own humanity blinds me.